Hello, 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 Change Now. Day 2, how are we doing? Nice to see you. Hopefully that's not too loud. That's hopefully not too loud. Hands up if you have made at least one connection at Change Now that you are going to stay in contact with after this summit. Excellent. Well, that is what Change Now is all about. It is about making meaningful connections. So my name is Elizabeth Course, and I'm going to be your moderator here today for what is one of the most fascinating, urgent, critical conversations around fossil fuels. So thank you for choosing this session around Don't Drill, Baby, Don't. Now, we have got 5 extraordinary speakers coming to you today with some really interesting perspectives. But of course, we have got a room full of change makers, and your voice is as important as who we have on stage. So, between you and I, we have been trusted to try something that Change Now has never done before today. And I need some willing participants to get involved. What do you reckon? Are you willing to give it a go? We are going to run some interactive polls. And if you see on screen, there is now a QR code where you are going to be invited to input some questions and some answers. I must tell you that this is completely anonymous, and all of the results that you will see on screen will be made available on the Change Now platform. Are you with me? Do not check your 13,000 emails when I get you to go onto your phone, okay? That's our agreement. Now we're gonna have a little practice run. So can I just have a show? Is everybody onto it, yeah? So we're gonna have a practice run. 3 words to describe how you're feeling right now. 3 words, how you're feeling right now. So this is where we see the energy we have in the room. Calm, determined, motivated, curious, excited, sleepy. Well, it is day 2 of Change Now. Energized, inspired, motivated. These are fabulous words, and this is why we are all at Change Now together. So keep them coming, keep them coming. Now, to introduce our session, did you know that the first modern oil well was drilled in Pennsylvania in 1859? 3 years earlier, Eunice Newton-Foot's 1856 experiment showed that CO2 absorbs heat faster than air and predicted a warming effect. So over 165 years, we have been simultaneously discovering the dangers of fossil fuels, as well as becoming increasingly dependent on them. And now today, despite the record-breaking temperatures, crashing through the 1.5 degree limit already, and all of the severe climate impacts that we're seeing, we see no slowdown of fossil fuel production. So this isn't just a story about fossil fuels and climate change. It's a story of power, of vested interest, and the tactics that we need for a new energy story in 2025. Now, we have a very, very special guest as our keynote for our first session. And before this gentleman comes on, I would like to ask the team to move the Menti to the next slide. And I'd like you to answer this quiz, this pop-up question. What percentage of electricity does Uruguay now generate from renewable sources? Thank you so much for playing along. Now, our keynote today is firmly convinced that decarbonizing electricity systems is possible. This conviction is grounded in real-world success. As former Secretary of Energy of Uruguay, he led the transformation process that today enables his country to generate 98% of its electricity from renewable sources. He is currently the president of REN21, and through various other global roles, he works with public and private sectors worldwide to share the lessons learned from Uruguay's just energy transition. Please put your hands together for Ramon Mendez, who is here to show us what is possible today.
Bonjour, good morning, and I'm very helpful from being here to share with you what happened in my country, Uruguay, in the energy sector. I think it's not working. Oh yes, it is. So yes, many people are now calling what happened in Uruguay the Uruguayan energy revolution. And we're going to see why. Uruguay is a small country in South America between Argentina and Brazil. We have a very stable democracy, a very stable economy, and then we're based in wonderful natural resources. But you know, about 15 years ago, when this story began, we're having very strong difficulties in our energy sector. Uruguay is a country we have no any kind of fossil fuel, so we have to import everything that we are using. At that time, we had already used our large rivers to install hydropower plants. This was good. But the point is that we are very sensitive to the climate variability. In particular, we suffer from El Niño phenomena. Perhaps you heard about it. And when El Niño year comes, we have a very dry years. And those years, hydropower plants produces half of that of a regular year. So this was a big problem for our energy system. And on top of that, our two big neighbors were having their own shortage in energy. So when they were to export electricity to us, it was at extraordinarily high prices. And last but not least, in those years, our economy was growing at extraordinary rates and poverty was decreasing. So this means that, in fact, yes, thank you. So, in fact, this was good for the country, but the energy demand was growing very rapidly. So this was really nice, but as a consequence, we were incrementing more and more the share of fossil fuels that we were forced to import, and we have a sharp rise in cost. But we took this opportunity. This perfect storm was just a crisis, and we used this to make a dramatic change. So where are we now? This is what I'm going to show you what happened after this revolution. What happened is, this is our present power mix. This is the last 2024 power mix. When you see, yes, the traditional hydro, but you also see a lot of wind. We see a lot of biomass waste in the mid. You know, biomass that used to be a climate liability, and now it's an energy asset for the country. In total, we don't have not even 98, but 99.1% of renewable sources in our power mix. This is a reality right now. This is possible. Just for comparison, the world average is 29%, okay? But perhaps the most interesting point is that we have shown that this can be done without a single battery. We don't have a single battery, any kind of energy storage in the whole country. We just proved that the combination of different renewable technologies can make the deal. And this is some interesting point. This is a new point. And of course, as a consequence, our CO2 emission has dropped back tremendously. I mean, nowadays we can say that we are a decarbonized country, because nowadays, when you measure the emission, even per capita or per kilowatt hour consumed, they are 40 times smaller than the world average. And you may say, how much did all this cost? And in fact, I like to say that the cost was negative in the sense that we had a tremendous positive impact on our economy, because we reduced by a factor of 2 the cost of producing electricity in the country today from before the transition. But perhaps more important than the overall reduction is the stability. You know that we are used all the time to have incredible variation in the cost not only on natural gas and not only because of wars. All the time we're having variation of the prices of energy commodities. We don't have nothing of this in our country because today we are independent on these fossil fuels. We are just dependent on our own domestic resources, which are free. So this gives us not just the reduction of the cost, but the stabilization of the cost. And this is perhaps more important. And this is because we succeeded to receive $6 billion investment in only a few years. And this is huge for a small economy like Uruguay. This is about 12% of the total GDP of the country. So imagine the tremendous positive impact that we have in the whole economy. For example, we got 50,000 new jobs in the country. And for a small country with only 3 million inhabitants, this is about 3% of the total labor force of the country just related to the energy transition. And on top of that, now, instead of importing electricity from our neighbors, we are exporting renewable energy surpluses to our neighbors and receiving incomes which can be as high as 1% of the total GDP of the country. And last but not least, we have already a tremendous positive impact on their social equity. Because today, 99.9% of the country is electrified, either with a combination of grid extensions and off-grid solutions. Nowadays in Uruguay, we're at about 1,000 houses lost in the middle of nowhere in the countryside without access to electricity. So my first conclusion of my first part of this talk is that, yes, absolutely, a just energy transition not only is possible, but it has already happened. And this is because we have proved that there were two misconceptions. The first thing we proved is that, yes, it is possible to manage a power system which is almost 100% renewable and with a high share, over 50% of that being intermittent sources like solar and wind. But then there is a second misconception that we proved it was, which is nowadays renewables, they are not just providing a solution for climate issue, but they are delivering tremendous positive impact in their socio-economies of all of countries. And this is happening now. So now we can say, okay, this happened in Uruguay already some years ago. It's not well known, but it's happened many years ago, I mean 5, 6 years ago. So what is happening in the rest of the world? And this is perhaps one of the most interesting figures I'm going to show, because as we can see there, what happened there is that in the last 10 years, the cost of producing electricity with different renewable sources went down at an incredible rate. Just photovoltaic, for example, went down by a factor of 10, and wind onshore, by a factor of 3. And more important, nowadays, the cost of producing electricity with renewable sources are lower than the cost of producing electricity with any kind of fossil fuel technology. So yes, we have the best product in town, with no difference. And on top of that, we are creating 12 million of jobs all over the world. Just for comparison, which is the amount of jobs in the oil and gas industry? Well, it's exactly the same figure. This means that we have already created as many jobs as the whole oil and gas industry. So, as a consequence, yes, we are changing little by little the share of the global renewable sources to produce electricity. For example, we have multiplied by 5 the share of solar and wind in our mixes. And as a total, we have jumped from 20 to 28% of renewables in the global power mix. But this is just one side of the coin. The other side of the coin is that fossil fuels, they went down only to 62 to 68%. But even worse, the size of this gray box is bigger in the right than in the left. This means that even if the share has been reduced, the total amount of fossil fuels that we're still using to produce electricity is bigger now than it used to be 10 years ago. And as a consequence, our emissions coming from CO2 combustion, they had been continually growing. There was 24 gigatons at the beginning of this century, and there are 35 gigatons now. And which is even worse, according to the science, Our emissions should be doing this in order to be sure that we're below 1.5 degrees increase in temperature, but in fact, our emissions are and continue to be doing this. So the question is, what is this going on? What is this happening? If we have the best product in town, why are we not using it? Why are we going so slowly in the transition? And to be honest, I've been working with that for many years now. And I found out there are three main reasons for that. There are three really insurmountable problems for energy transition. The first one is that in many countries we still have a dominant narrative which says we cannot live without fossil fuels. And this is based in misconception like it is not possible to manage intermittency like wind and solar, or if you put batteries, then renewables become more expensive than just putting there. And of course, this is absolutely not true. I mean, if someone tells you that, please ask him to take a plane and go to Uruguay to see that this is absolutely wrong. The second insurmountable problem, which is also present in many countries, in many markets, is that in fact there are strong market distortions in our energy systems. We have incredible subsidies to fossil fuels. Not only tax exemptions, but also direct subsidies, which are as big as $1 trillion per year. Millions of dollars every year subsidies to fossil fuels. It is impossible to compete with that. And the third, perhaps the less known, but the most problem present worldwide, is that we have a completely inadequate regulatory framework. When renewables came into the game, yes, we made minor changes in the regulatory system and in the market design. But in fact, those changes were just to allow for the participation of different renewable sources. But in what is happening right now is that still now the structure and the philosophy, the characteristics of our present energy system are based on fossil fuels. So what is going now, in fact, is that we are continue asking renewables to work with inadequate rules of the game. And even worse, because those rules are that favor fossil fuels. And this is happening worldwide. In a way, what you are doing right now is like asking the best one, but then giving a tennis racket, put him in a tennis court, and ask him to deliver what he does. And this is what we're doing. So the point is that today, and I'm not exaggerating, our present energy system are in collision course with net zero goal. And this is because we still have a strong influence of fossil fuel stakeholders that they remain very strong yet. So we have to be very clear on this. Transition will not happen spontaneously, even if you have the best product in town. We have to put in place public policies in order for things to happen. So in order to do it, what can we do in fact? And just to answer this question, please let me go back to Uruguay. Let's try to understand what happened in Uruguay, what were the real reasons for the success. And once again, here we have heard a lot about the dominant narrative. The dominant narrative is saying, oh, they succeeded because they have a lot of hydro, or they succeeded because they're a small country. It's easier for a small country. In fact, nothing can be farther from the truth. Because on the one side, yes, we have hydro. But without hydro, and by following the same pathway that we follow in Uruguay, perhaps we hadn't reached 99% or 98%, but we had reached for sure 75 to 80% of a combination of renewables. And being a small country, come on, you don't know what being a global south small country is. Everything is much more difficult. We have more difficulties to get investment. We have a smaller industry characteristic. We have less academics. So everything is much more difficult. So the real reason of the key success in Uruguay, and in fact, based on three pillars. And I'm going to show you these three pillars at the end of my presentation. The first one is that we succeeded to make a long-term strategy that was backed by the entire Uruguayan political system. And this was crucial because it was based on real truth. I mean, not just in imagination, it was based on all the benefits for a country to make a transition. And this ensures the continuity of the process. Take my example. I've been the Secretary of Energy of 2 consecutive presidents, and this brings me the power of going up to the end of the transition. But this is just the first point. The second point is that for things to happen, we really need to make dramatic changes. We need to put in place a whole transformative ecosystem. And we have to deeply innovate. We have to be brave enough in order to change legal issues, regulatory issues, and the market, even institutional issues. Everything has to change in order to put in place a transition. And we have consequences in 2 kinds, both technical aspect and market aspect. Concerning the way we plan and operate the system, we dramatically change the way we're doing. Our engineers worked for years to develop the way of putting intermittent sources in the center of the game. Today, wind and solar capacities are of the same order of the total peak demand. This means that when in Uruguay we have enough sun and wind, 100% of electricity is just sun and wind. And all the rest is following. Particularly hydropower plants, all the rest are just following the variability of wind and solar. And this makes the whole robustness of the whole system. But what's more important is what happened in the market design. Today in Uruguay, we plan in a global way. So we define which is the best combination of different technologies in order to deliver robustness and at the same time the lowest price. And now we are going from the traditional short-term energy market to a long-term capacity market. And this was the reason of Asociacion. In fact, what we have done, you have gone from a traditional collection of interacting actors to a systemic approach of the system. So just to begin, but then there is the third and crucial point, which is governance. In this kind of system, when you are doing disruptive changes, having all the stakeholders on board with win-win strategies is absolutely crucial. So just to begin my last comparison, what should we do? We as a community, what should we do in this context? And in fact, there are 2 things to do. The first one is just to address the cultural conflict. Yes, we have a cultural conflict. Yes, we have to build a new narrative. But this new narrative now should be based on real facts, on real success stories. We have to tell the politicians, for example, we have to show them, to highlight what are the national benefits for the transition. For example, to global north politicians, we have to tell them that this is the best for your economy, and for global south politicians, that this is the best for your development. But this is not enough. The last point is that we have to strongly remove the strong bias that now are favoring the fossil fuels, and this in everything, in the way we plan, the way we operate, and the market design. So please do this new climate activism and work with governments, with private sector, with academy, in order to create the appropriate ecosystem. So thank you very much. This is what we're doing. We live in Rain 21. And please come and join us.